I used to think the story about that bathroom was just a silly rumor, until I walked past it. I'm Hana, a 12th grade student who had just transferred to a high school on the outskirts of the city. From the very first days, I had vaguely heard strange rumors from my classmates. All of them revolved around the bathroom on the 3rd floor, where a female student had once been brutally murdered. One afternoon after school, I happened to pass by that bathroom because the main staircase was under repair. I stood still for a few seconds. Then something compelled me to step closer to the door. And then I did the stupidest thing in my life. I raised my hand and knocked gently 3 times on the door.
Nina, are you there? I've always been here.
Immediately after, the bathroom door slowly creaked open, but inside was nothing but an empty, eerily cold store. I panicked and ran away, my heart pounding wildly, her whisper still echoing in my ear. Since that day, I began to hear 3 knocks coming from everywhere. No matter where I was, school, cafe, or even at home, the knocking would always return. That night, I lay exhausted on my bed, worn out from the endless haunting knocks. I trembled as I walked toward the bathroom door, my heart thumping like it was about to burst. I stepped inside, wanting to wash my face to clear my head. But as soon as I looked up, I was horrified to see a girl standing behind me in the mirror. She wore an old school uniform, with long black hair hanging down, covering most of her pale face. The corners of her mouth slowly curled into a cold, haunting smile.
Nina! I've always been here.
My whole body froze in place, unable to move. My legs felt as if they were glued to the floor. The bathroom door suddenly slammed shut, trapping me in the cold space. I could feel a chilling breath on the back of my neck. Since that night, Mina's shadow had always appeared beside me. Even though I tried to act normal, I could never erase her presence.
I still vividly remembered the days I spent in that terrifying apartment complex. It haunted me for a long time. That year, I had just been accepted into university and moved into an old apartment building near the campus. I was prone to allergies, so I often applied baby powder to my skin to relieve the itching. However, because I was clumsy, I accidentally spilled the powder on the floor, creating a thin layer of white dust. It was already late, so I hurried out without cleaning it up. When I returned, I was stunned to see smudged footprints clearly imprinted all over the powder-covered floor. Worried, I called the building manager to report what had happened. Hello? I suspect someone broke into my apartment while I was away. Could you please check the security cameras for me?
Ask the security guard tomorrow. It's too late now.
He hung up right after that, but the uneasiness still lingered inside me. I got up and walked around the house, checking every corner to see if anything was missing. As I stepped out onto the balcony, a cat suddenly lunged at me and clawed my face. I screamed and stumbled back, a burning pain spreading across my skin. The cat growled, then leapt onto the neighboring balcony and vanished into the darkness. I clutched my chest, breathing heavily, telling myself it was probably just the neighbor's mischievous cat. That night, as I was sleeping, I heard someone calling my name.
Who allowed you to sleep here? Get up.
I jolted awake, only to find myself lying in the middle of a graveyard. In front of me stood a thin man with a furious expression, staring straight at me. In his hand, he held a sickle, ready to strike at any moment. Who are you? Why am I here?
This is my home. Who gave you permission to lie here?
As soon as he finished speaking, he raised the sickle and charged at me in a frenzy. I was so frightened that I turned to run, but tripped over a rock and fell to the ground. Before I could get up, the man was already upon me, the sickle raised high above my head. I screamed in panic and suddenly woke up in my familiar room. Still shaken, I immediately called my best friend. She arrived not long after, and I trembled as I told her everything that had happened. To help me uncover the truth, she poured an entire box of baby powder all over the room. Then she suggested I sleep in her room and said we'd come back to check in the morning. The next day, when we opened the door, I nearly fainted. Footprints were everywhere, children's footprints, adult footprints in all different sizes. But what chilled me to the bone was that the prints crawled up the walls and even onto the ceiling. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my things and moved out that very day. A few weeks later, while eating near that apartment complex, I saw a crowd of people running out of the building in a panic. What's going on with that apartment complex across the street?
I heard the building owner dug up someone's grave to build that place without permission. People are furious and came to tear it down.
Really? I just moved out of there because of some strange happenings.
A lot of people left after being scared off. No one dares to stay there anymore.
I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice, a chill running down my spine. Since then, I never dared to go near that apartment building again.
Every night at 2 a.m., I heard my mother's lullaby coming from downstairs. But the problem was, my mother had just passed away last month. My name is June, 27 years old, a freelance graphic designer. After my mother died from a sudden stroke, I decided to return to the old house in Vermont, where I was born and raised. I hoped to find the familiar peace there to help soothe the pain of losing my mother. I began to relive old habits, sitting in the exact chair my mother used to sit in, eating from the porcelain bowl she used. This made me feel as if my mother was still by my side like before. On the first night, I couldn't sleep because the emptiness in my chest kept stabbing sharply. I told myself I needed time to get used to life without my mother anymore. Then, when the clock struck exactly 2 a.m., a melody suddenly sounded from downstairs. At first, I thought it was a hallucination because there was no one else in the house but me. But when I listened more carefully, I was shocked to realize it was the lullaby my mother used to sing to me every night.
Sleep well, my dear. I am always here.
I ran downstairs to check but found nothing, and the singing had stopped at some point. Maybe I missed my mother so much that I created that sound in my head. In the following nights, the lullaby still played at exactly 2
Don't go
a.m.
to them.
but the melody was no longer gentle.
Go to the
The
basement.
sounds began to distort and go off beat. I searched every drawer and corner of the room, trying to find where the sound came from. When I knelt beside the bed, I discovered an old cassette player, rusted and worn. I picked it up, my hands trembling as I pressed play.
Don't go to the basement. Don't go to the basement.
I couldn't endure it any longer. An unnamed urge forced me to go down. I jumped up, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped out of the room. Downstairs, I stood frozen in front of the basement door that had somehow been left ajar. I had never gone in there. My mother had strictly forbidden me since I was a child, afraid I might fall. I reached out and pushed the door. The hinge screeched a long, chilling sound. When the flashlight stopped on a familiar object, my old cradle. Inside the cradle was an old leather notebook, its cover worn and torn. It was my mother's diary. I picked it up and flipped through the pages. The writing was broken, as if from someone losing their mind. On the last page, I saw a scribbled line, ink blurred as if smeared by tears. I took her life. However, why is she still present? I immediately put my hand on my chest. No warmth, no heartbeat. It turned out I was dead, but my soul was still trapped in this house. Every night I lived again, repeating familiar actions. And tonight, here I was again.
I was an online seller and had just moved into a new house to support my business. Luckily, I found a rather spacious house in a small neighborhood, and the rent was incredibly reasonable. During the first few nights living there, I was often awakened by the sound of scissors echoing from the next room. I thought to myself, could it be a thief? Summoning all my courage, I went out to check. But as soon as I opened the door, the sound disappeared, and the door to the other room remained tightly shut. Everything seemed normal, as if nothing had happened, so I tiredly returned to my bedroom. A while later, I was woken up again by the same sound, but this time it was louder and more urgent. A growing sense of unease crept over me, and my heart pounded in my chest. I got out of bed and went to the next room, but just like before, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. As I was about to close the door, I suddenly noticed a woman standing in the middle of the room, her head bowed. She was holding a pair of rusty scissors, the blades dripping with a thick, dark liquid onto the floor. I stood frozen in the doorway, my legs glued to the ground, unable to move. Who are you? Why are you in my house? The woman didn't answer. Instead, she slowly lifted her face and it was no longer intact. Her mouth had been slit open all the way to her ears and deep scratches covered her face, oozing fresh blood. Terrified, I let out a scream, only to realize I was lying in bed with sunlight streaming in through the window. Was it just a dream? But the fear felt so real and cold sweat drenched my body. Unable to shake off my unease, I decided to call the landlord to ask about the woman. However, he dismissed my concerns, saying he knew nothing, before hurriedly hanging up. I had a gut feeling that he was hiding something about the history of the house. That night, the events repeated themselves, but this time, the sound seemed to be right next to my ear. Frightened, I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the chilling noise. Moments later, the sound suddenly stopped, and I thought that perhaps it was finally over. But when I opened my eyes, I was horrified to see the woman floating above me on the ceiling, laughing eerily. Her face drew closer and closer, her icy breath sending shivers down my spine. Overcome with terror, I screamed, mustering all my strength to leap out of bed and dash out of the house. Her sinister laughter echoed behind me, following every step I took. That night, I booked a nearby hotel to stay in, desperate to get away from that cursed house. The next morning, as I returned, I ran into a neighbor who had just come back from somewhere. Hello, ma'am. I just moved into the house across the street.
You live in that house?
Yes, but I'm planning to move out today. Is there something wrong?
A long time ago, a woman was brutally murdered by her husband in that house.
Why did her husband do that?
She was having an affair, and when her husband found out, he slit her face and then killed her before turning himself into the police.
I saw her last night. Her face was horrifying.
Ever since she died, she's been haunting that house, scaring off women with beautiful faces like yours.
A chill ran down my spine, sending a wave of goosebumps over my skin.